Good afternoon and Salam Malaysia Madani. I'm Mohana Priya. You're watching World Today and here are top 10 stories of the day. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi will make a two-day official visit to Malaysia beginning Saturday. This will be Modi's third visit to Malaysia, with the 10th India-Malaysia CEO Forum also scheduled during his visit. The forthcoming visit of Modi serves as an opportunity for both leaders to review the entire gamut of bilateral cooperation, highlighting numerous areas for cooperation. Nuclear talks between Iran and the US are set to be held in Muscat, Oman on Friday. Iran insists that the talks would be limited to Iran's nuclear program. Tehran would welcome negotiations over the nuclear dispute, but stated that the US insistence on dealing with non-nuclear issues could jeopardize the talks. Chinese President Xi Jinping had back-to-back conversations with the Russian and US presidents, marking the first such phone conversations by Xi with Putin and Trump this year. The conversations came amid tensions between the US and Iran and duties to pool efforts in the UN Security Council. Russia and Ukraine concluded the first day of the second round of US-brokered talks in Abu Dhabi on Wednesday. Great progress has been made on negotiations over the past year, but a breakthrough in the talks may not come for a while. Negotiations conducted in a trilateral format involving Ukraine, the US and Russia will continue on Thursday. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz kicked off his Gulf tour by meeting with Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. The biggest EU economy seeks to diversify its key trade and energy partnerships. Germany has long exported defense goods and sealed major infrastructure deals in the Gulf region. In return, the West Asian monarchies have used their energy riches to invest in German corporate giants. German troops took command of NATO's forces in Lithuania on Wednesday. The alliance bolsters its strength in countries bordering Russia. They will lead units from Belgium, Czech Republic, Luxembourg, the Netherlands and Norway, as well as German and Lithuanian troops. The German army's deployment in Lithuania is its first permanent foreign deployment since the Second World War. Buses carrying Gazans returning from Egypt arrived at Al Nasser Hospital in Khan Yunis early this morning. Families waited outside the medical facility before reuniting with their loved ones through the newly reopened Rafah crossing. The crossing was reopened as part of the requirement under an October ceasefire deal. Google parent Alphabet is targeting capital expenditure of $175 billion to $185 billion this year. It is yet another aggressive ramp-up in spending as Alphabet deepens its investments to push ahead in the AI race. Cloud computing majors have poured billions to grow their AI infrastructure to meet the growing enterprise demand and to fuel their own development of technologies. Greenland recorded its warmest January on record this year, 4 times the global average. The warm weather means sea ice extends less far south along the coast each winter. It can potentially negatively impact the country's development. Warming climate triggers disruptions of fishing activities, which is Greenland's main economic driver. N'Golo Kante joins Fenerbahce, while Morocco forward Youssef En-Nesyri has moved to Saudi Arabia's Al Ittihad. The mutual exchange transfer between Al Ittihad and Fenerbahce initially seemed to have failed due to official transaction complications. However, Al Ittihad later announced the sale of Kante to the Turkish side after acquiring En-Nesyri. And that was our top 10 stories in a quick brief. Up next, the complete World Today Bulletin, where we provide the essential details. Stay tuned.
Dunia digital penuh dengan kandungan ganas, eksploitasi kanak-kanak dan buli cyber berleluasa di luar kawalan. Akta Keselamatan dalam Talian 2025 atau AMSA dikuat kuasa untuk melindungi rakyat. Pengguna boleh bertindak atas kandungan yang berisiko. Setiap laporan yang dibuat, platform digital wajib bertindak pantas terhadap penyalahgunaan digital. Dengan AMSA, internet kini lebih selamat untuk kanak-kanak dan keluarga kita.
Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi will make a two-day official visit to Malaysia beginning Saturday, during which he will hold bilateral discussions with Prime Minister Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim. India's External Affairs Ministry said in a statement that this will be Narendra Modi's third visit to Malaysia. Modi will interact with members of the Indian community as well as industry and business representatives. The 10th India-Malaysia CEO Forum is also scheduled during his visit, which is being undertaken at Datuk Sri Anwar's invitation. The Indian statement said that the India-Malaysia relationship is multifaceted and growing. The forthcoming visit of Modi serves as an opportunity for both leaders to review the entire gamut of bilateral cooperation. It highlighted various areas of cooperation such as trade, investment, defence, security, maritime affairs, digital and financial technology, energy, healthcare, education, culture, tourism and people-to-people ties. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi, in a post on X, said that the nuclear talks with the US are set to be held in Muscat, Oman on Friday. A U.S. official later confirmed the meeting, although U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio had earlier said that any meaningful talks between the U.S. and Iran must include Tehran's missile arsenal and other issues. A senior Iranian official responded that the talks would be limited to Iran's nuclear program, adding that its missile program was off the table. A second senior Iranian official said that Tehran would welcome negotiations over the nuclear dispute, but that U.S. insistence on dealing with non-nuclear issues could jeopardize the talks. Differences over the scope of the talks and lack of agreement on a venue had raised doubts whether the meeting would take place, leaving open the possibility that U.S. President Donald Trump could carry out his threat to strike Iran. Trump has warned that bad things would probably happen if a deal could not be reached, ratcheting up pressure on the Islamic Republic in a standoff that has led to mutual threats of airstrikes and stirred fears of escalation into a wider war. United Nations Chief Antonio Guterres urged the US and Russia to quickly sign a new nuclear deal, as the existing treaty was set to expire in a grave moment for international peace and security. Now, the New START agreement will end Thursday, formally releasing both Moscow and Washington from a raft of restrictions on their nuclear arsenals. The UN Secretary-General added that the New START and other arms control treaties had drastically improved the security of all people. Guterres urged Washington and Moscow to return to the negotiating table without delay and to agree upon a successor framework. Russia and the US together control more than 80% of the world's nuclear warheads, but arms agreements have been withering away. New START, first signed in 2010, limited each side's nuclear arsenal to 1,550 deployed strategic warheads, a reduction of nearly 30% from the previous limit set in 2002. It also allowed each side to conduct on-site inspections of the other's nuclear arsenal, although these were suspended during the COVID-19 pandemic and have not resumed since. China's President Xi Jinping held back-to-back conversations with the Russian and U.S. presidents. Xi talked to U.S. President Donald Trump over the phone. Beijing had yet to release more details of the conversation between Xi and Trump, which came hours after the Chinese president held a virtual call with Russian President Vladimir Putin. This marked the first such phone conversations by Xi with Putin and Trump this year. Xi's conversations with Putin and Trump came amid tensions between the U.S. and Iran, as well as efforts to end the war in Ukraine, as the second phase of the trilateral talks between Kiev, Moscow and Washington began in the UAE on Wednesday. As responsible major countries and permanent members of the UN Security Council, China and Russia are duty-bound to pool global efforts to uphold fairness and justice and defend the victorious outcomes of World War II. They are also committed to safeguarding the UN-centered international system, upholding the basic norms of international law, and jointly maintaining global strategic stability. While ties between China and Russia have grown in recent years, with trade volume at around $200 billion last year, Beijing and Washington have seen ties stabilize after Xi and Trump met late last year in South Korea. U.S. President Donald Trump suggested that a softer touch may be needed on immigration, as his administration said 700 federal officers would be pulled from Minnesota, but that mass deportations would not stop. The fatal shootings of 2 protesters by federal officers in Minneapolis last month sparked widespread outrage in the United States and calls for an end to immigration raids in the Midwestern city. But Trump's administration has been reluctant to shift course.
I learned that maybe we can use a little bit of a softer touch. But you still have to be tough. These are criminals. We're dealing with really hard criminals.
Trump's border chief Tom Homan had earlier announced that 700 federal officers would be withdrawn from Minnesota, but said that the contentious deployment would continue, with about 2,000 agents remaining after the drawdown. Protests against immigration and customs enforcement operations and shootings by federal immigration agents have taken place for more than a month across the Midwestern state. Russia and Ukraine concluded the first day of the second round of U.S. brokered talks in Abu Dhabi, the United Arab Emirates, on Wednesday. The negotiations, conducted in a trilateral format involving Ukraine, the U.S. and Russia, will continue on Thursday. Ukraine's position on effectively ending the conflict is very clear, adding that Ukraine's partners should achieve this goal through solid security guarantees and by putting pressure on Russia. Ukrainian officials stressed that the delegation was working to achieve a dignified and lasting peace. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said at a press conference in Moscow on Wednesday that the road to a peaceful settlement of the situation in Ukraine remains open, but Russia will continue the special military operation until appropriate decisions are taken by Kiev. Meanwhile, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said on Wednesday that great progress has been made on negotiations over the past year, but a breakthrough in the talks may not come for a while, as the items that remain are the most difficult ones. The second round of talks is scheduled to run for 2 days. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz headed to Saudi Arabia on Wednesday to kick off a Gulf tour as the biggest EU economy seeks to diversify its key trade and energy partnerships. In a turbulent world where U.S. President Donald Trump has rocked long-standing transatlantic security and economic ties, Germany is racing to cement alternative relationships worldwide. Joined by a business delegation, the Conservative leader met with Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman before he will travel to Qatar and the UAE on a whistle-stop tour that concludes Friday. Germany has long exported defense goods and sealed major infrastructure deals in the Gulf region, whose monarchies have, in turn, used their energy riches to invest in German corporate giants from Volkswagen to Deutsche Bank. Berlin has now accelerated efforts to lessen its reliance on American LNG and wants to increasingly bank on green hydrogen generated through clean energy to achieve its climate targets. Saudi Arabia and other Gulf states have meanwhile been moving to diversify away from oil and gas, investing heavily in sectors from renewables to tourism, logistics and AI. German troops took command of NATO's forces in Lithuania on Wednesday as the alliance bolsters its strength in countries bordering Russia. The German Army's 45th Armoured Brigade, nicknamed the Lithuania Brigade, took charge of the multinational battle group from Lithuanian forces in a ceremony in Kaunas. They will lead units from Belgium, Czech Republic, Luxembourg, the Netherlands and Norway, as well as German and Lithuanian troops. The German Army's deployment in Lithuania is its first permanent foreign deployment since the Second World War. The Lithuania Brigade was activated as recently as May 2025 and is set to be a 5,000-strong force once fully formed. Speaking at the ceremony, German Parliamentary State Secretary for Defense Sebastian Hartmann said he expected the brigade to be fully deployed within 2 years. NATO forces have been reinforcing their troops in the alliance's eastern flank following Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2022. Buses carrying Gazans returning from Egypt arrived at Nasser Hospital in Khan Yunis early this morning. Families were seen waiting outside the medical facility and embracing their returning loved ones. Israel this week reopened the Rafah crossing to Egypt, one of the requirements under an October ceasefire that set out the first phase of US President Donald Trump's plan to stop fighting between Israel and Hamas. But health officials said Israeli tank shelling and airstrikes killed 24 Palestinians, including 7 children in Gaza on Wednesday. The Israelis said that it launched the strikes in response to Hamas opening fire on Israeli troops. Hamas said Israel's actions undermined efforts to stabilize the ceasefire. In a statement, the group called for immediate international pressure to halt violations. Coming up next, U.S. Vice President plans to establish mineral trade bloc to counter China. Welcome back. U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance on Wednesday unveiled plans to marshal allies into a preferential trade bloc for critical minerals, proposing coordinated price floors as Washington escalates efforts to loosen China's grip on materials crucial to advanced manufacturing. The Washington meeting comes after President Donald Trump on Monday launched a strategic stockpile of critical minerals called Project Vault, backed by $10 billion in seed funding from the U.S. Export-Import Bank and $2 billion in private funding. Vance also told a meeting of more than 50 countries aimed at boosting access to critical minerals that the U.S. will establish a system creating price floors for the commodities. Vance said that the U.S. was proposing a trading bloc for critical minerals and many countries had already signed on to the plan. China has wielded its chokehold in the processing of many minerals as geo-economic leverage, at times curbing exports. This in turn suppresses prices and undercuts other countries' ability to diversify sources of the materials used to make semiconductors, electric vehicles, and advanced weapons. Alphabet said on Wednesday that it was targeting capital expenditure of $175 billion to $185 billion this year in yet another aggressive ramp-up in spending from the Google parent as it deepens its investments to push ahead in the AI race. Revenue at Google Cloud grew 48% to $17.7 billion in the fourth quarter ended December, compared with analysts' average estimate of 35.2% jump, according to data compiled by LSEG. Cloud computing majors have poured hundreds of billions of dollars to grow their AI infrastructure, both to meet the growing enterprise demand for the cloud services and to fuel their own development of AI technologies and products. Like larger rivals Amazon Web Services and Microsoft's Azure, Google Cloud has been grappling with capacity constraints that have dented its ability to fully cash in on AI demand from its customers. Along with Meta, the three cloud companies are expected to collectively shell out more than $500 billion on AI this year. Meta last week hiked its capital investment for AI development this year by 73%, targeting spending between $115 billion and $135 billion, while Microsoft also reported record quarterly capital expenditure. South Africa's Democratic Alliance DA leader John Stephenson said on Wednesday that he would not seek re-election in the party's leadership contest in April, but would continue his role as Agriculture Minister. Stefansson had led the pro-business DA since 2019 and has been overseeing the government's response to a worsening foot and mouth disease outbreak. The DA is the second biggest party in the coalition government formed in June 2024 after an election in which the African National Congress, ANC, lost its parliamentary majority for the first time since the end of white minority rule in 1994. Stefansson had faced allegations that he used a party-issued credit card for personal expenses, although a DA investigation found no evidence that he had misappropriated funds. He told reporters that his term would be remembered for leading the DA into national government and putting South Africa on a new path to prosperity. An Indonesian junior high school student in Indonesia's West Kalimantan province set off a Molotov cocktail in his classroom, resulting in several students being injured. The student, who prepared 6 other Molotov cocktails which were not ignited, was a victim of bullying and is an active member of a violent ideology online community. Authorities said that they found several dangerous items, including 5 portable gas cylinders, modified with firecrackers, nails, 6 bottles containing fuel, equipped with cloth wicks, and a knife. In November last year, a student carried out a bomb attack at a school mosque in Jakarta, allegedly inspired by attacks carried out by white supremacists and neo-Nazis, such as the 2019 massacre at mosques in Christchurch, New Zealand, and the 1999 shootings at Columbine High School in the US. A storm system was causing widespread disruption across southern Spain and Portugal, bringing heavy rain and strong winds. The Spanish Weather Service has warned that some areas could receive rainfall equivalent to a full year's average within just a few hours. In Spain's Andalusia region, about 3,000 people were evacuated from low-lying residential areas due to flooding. Schools were shuttered, train services were suspended on some routes, and several roads were closed. Conditions were similarly severe in Portugal, where recovery efforts were still underway following a powerful storm that hit last week and caused extensive damage. New flooding triggered by latest storm named Leonardo by the authorities cut off several villages, caused rivers to burst their banks, and forced schools to remain closed. Road and rail traffic were disrupted, mainly due to landslides and fallen trees. The Portuguese Weather Service warned that additional storms are expected in the coming days. Greenland recorded its warmest January on record this year, with warming occurring at about 4 times the global average, reshaping the outlook for sectors from fishing to mining.
So the preliminary mean monthly temperature for January in Nuuk is 0.2 degrees Celsius. And what we normally see is minus 7.7. And that is a huge difference. And actually the mean monthly temperature so far is the highest mean monthly temperature in a January we've seen.
The warm weather means sea ice extends less far south along the coast each winter and is thinner even where it does exist, making it difficult to use for transport. It can also affect the mainstay of Greenland's economy, fishing.
With monitoring the conditions in Greenland is, of course, that it's a new situation. We haven't seen that before. It's where we're in a new regime where things are happening and occurring, and processes are influenced in a way that we haven't seen before.
And that wraps up World Today this time round. Until next time, I'm Mohana Priya. Salam Malaysia Madani. Thank you for your company.